Welcome to Story Time, one more time. I have some remarks I'd like to make of a personal nature, but I'd rather make those afterwards if we could. Right after the invitation song is sung, I'd like to come back up for just a minute and make some personal remarks to all of you about our week together. I'm in Matthew chapter 20, and I'm going to give you time to go there while I tell you about an experience I had. I was preaching in Birmingham, Alabama, and on one occasion, I was going with the preacher and a couple of other guys to meet for an early morning breakfast. And we drove to this place, and as we pulled into the strip mall there where the restaurant was, I saw a large group of Hispanic men, young men, all gathered together over under one of the awnings of one of the buildings there. And I was getting ready to make a remark about what is that about? I thought, are they waiting to get into a place, or are they gathering for some other reason? And as I got ready to ask the question, there was a truck, in fact, two of them, that pulled into the parking lot, and it looked like construction trucks. You know, they kind of beat up, lots of stuff in the back. And as they pulled into parking spaces, those Hispanic men ran toward the trucks. They were running, full speed toward the trucks. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And as they got close, they were into the windows of the trucks. The construction guys had the windows down. And I asked the people I was with, do you know what's going on? They said, yeah, those are day workers. And they live from day to day working. And when somebody pulls in to hire workers, they run to the trucks to try to be the first ones to get hired, because if they don't get hired, they don't get paid. And if they don't get paid, they don't eat. You may have been a day worker at some time in your life. Maybe you are now. There's certainly nothing disreputable or embarrassing about that. But what impressed me about that was the urgency with which they petitioned those men for work. This intense desire, hire me, hire me. They weren't speaking in English. I couldn't hear them saying that, but they were clearly begging, hire me. I want to be hired. That is the context of this parable that Jesus tells in Matthew chapter 20. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. When you hear laborers, think day workers, day laborers, temps. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a denarius for the day, he sent him into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour, and he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And to those he said, you also go into the vineyard. Whatever's right, I'll give you. So they went. And again, he went out about the 6th hour and the 9th hour. And he did the same thing. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing around. And he said to them, why have you been standing here idle all day long? And they said to him, because no one hired us. He said to them, you go into the vineyard too. And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, Call the laborers, pay them their wages, beginning with the last group to the first. And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each one received a denarius. And when those hired first came, they thought they had received more. But each of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they grumbled at the landowner, saying, "These last men have worked only 1 hour. You made them equal to us who've borne the burden and the scorching heat of the day." But he answered and said to them, "Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? You take what is yours and go. But I wish to give to this last man the same as to you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with what is my own? Or is your eye envious because I'm generous?" So the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. What an interesting parable. I have to tell you, I'm a person with the DNA of a rule keeper. When I play games and you play with me, we're going to play by the rules. I don't do house rules unless I'm in your house. And what that means is if we play Monopoly, there is no kitty. And you don't collect money if you step onto that free parking space. You know why? Because that's not in the rules. I'm a rule keeper. I figure there's a fairness aspect and a right way to do things. And this parable grates on my rule-keeping nature. There's something about this parable that makes almost all of us say, well, wait, that doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound fair. So let's talk about it tonight, shall we? I want to tell you, first of all, this parable is a result, as have been so many of the others that we've talked about, a result of some things that happened before the parable is spoken. I want you to turn back to chapter 19, and I want to show you what leads up to Jesus saying this. In chapter 19, first, in verse 13, Jesus blesses the children. Children are brought to him, and the disciples rebuked the children that came to Jesus. Why are they rebuking the children? Hey, you're just kids. You don't know your place. This is the master. He's busy. Leave him alone. I know that because of the way Jesus responds. Let the children alone. Don't hinder them from coming. He says, you need to understand you're pushing away people that are the nature of the kingdom of heaven. And then this rich young ruler comes to him saying, what do I need to do to inherit eternal life? That's in verses 16 through 22. You know that story. Jesus gives him some instructions. You know the law. He says, I've been keeping the law. What else do I need to do? Still something lacking, something I'm lacking. What do I do? And Jesus says, well, if you want to be complete, verse 21, go sell your possessions, give it to the poor. You'll have treasure in heaven. Come follow me. And when the young man heard that statement, he went away grieving, for he was one who owned much property. And as the disciples saw him walking away, they are puzzled at what Jesus has done. he says, they say that, to him, I say to you, it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He's answering the question they have. If this guy can't be saved, who can be? I mean, he kept the law since his youth. He's done all that. He's come acknowledging he needs something. And you tell him to do something that it's almost impossible for him to do? And then you got one more step. Stay with me one more time. We've got the value of children. We've got the value of the rich ruler. And then Peter and the disciples say, we've left everything and followed you. What is there for us? What do we get? What do we get? And I want to tell you, when Jesus says what he says to him, he ends in verse 30 with this statement. Many who are first will be last, and the last first. Have you heard that before? You have tonight. Where? It's the same conclusion he draws at the end of the parable. So Jesus is clearly tying the parable to what's just happened. Because when he finished with the disciples, what about the rich young ruler? What about the children? What about us? The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And then he tells them a parable, and he concludes the parable with, not, and they all lived happily ever after, but the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. The disciples are wondering why a great prospect like the rich young ruler wasn't hired. How come Jesus didn't take him? And Peter is wondering, well, what do we get for all our loyalty and working for you? And all of them are wondering at Matthew 19, verse 30. I used to try to play that card when I was really thirsty in school and the water line was really long. Last shall be first, first shall be last, coming to the front. But nobody believed the application of that verse. So let's talk about these people that are hired. In the story, Jesus says the landowner goes and hires people at the beginning of the morning, early in the morning, and then it starts using relative hours. He comes back at the third hour. So let's just use figures that probably we can relate to. He hired some guys at 6 a.m. And then 3 hours later, at 9, he realized I could use some more workers. I'm going to go back and pick up some more. And then at around noon, he went back again and said, I still got work if you want work. And then he went back at 3, hired more workers, and finally, think about this, the day is over at 6 p.m. At 5 p.m., he hires some guys. Go work for an hour, and then he begins paying them. Calls the foreman and says, hey, line them up to get paid, all those workers. I don't know how many there are, but it sounds like a pretty good bunch. And it's interesting because he says, bring the last guys up front first. So the people that have only been working 1 hour, barely worked up a sweat, from 5 to 6, come. And imagine how they feel when they're chosen to receive a day's wages. That's what a denarius is. A full day's wages. And then the 9th hour guys come, and they get the same thing. And the 6th hour guys come, and they get the same thing. And the 3 hour guys, the 3rd hour guys come. And now you're part of the early morning crew. you've worked 12 hours today. Which one of us would not calculate, I'm surely going to get more than those guys who worked 1 hour, but they don't. They get the same amount of money, what they originally contracted for. What's happening here? Let me put you in the minds of the workers. Let's begin with the 5-hour or the 5 p.m. crew. Let's begin with the 5 p.m. crew. You may be thinking, well, that's a pretty good deal. I mean, to stand for working 1 hour and receive a full day's wages. Okay? I'd do that. Would you? Because I want you to think. You're a day laborer. If you don't work, you don't get paid. If you don't get paid, you don't eat. Every day is a struggle. Every day is competition. And these guys have been hopeless all day long. All day long. I mean, they got out there. They were there at 6 a.m. Had on their work boots, work clothes, gloves. They were ready. They wanted to get picked, and they didn't. And then when the owner came back at 9 in the morning and said, I'm looking for more workers, they got their hopes up again. Overlooked again. And at noon, oh, maybe now. And they were overlooked. And at 3 p.m., they were overlooked. And now at 5 p.m., how long have they been standing hoping for work? 11 hours. Look, they're not sitting at home waiting for a phone call or a messenger to come to their door. They have been turned down repeatedly. I'm just saying, I want you to think about not even just the physical drain of standing there all day long with no work, wondering, what am I going to do? What am I going to tell my wife? What am I going to tell my kids? I go home at the end of the day, 6 o'clock. Hey, Daddy, did you work? No, I didn't work today. So what do we eat? What do we eat? And not just tonight, what do we eat tomorrow morning, Dad? You see how that preys on the hearts of these men? They're the breadwinners, and they're losing the bread. 11 hours, they've been hoping for work. Now, I don't know about you, but I think I've experienced somewhat the anxiety of rejection that these men have experienced. I go back to my elementary days. I'm in school, and the coach taking us all out for physical exercise, when we go for phys ed, says today here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a softball game, and we're going to have 2 people be captains, and they're going to choose the people for their teams one at a time. So the 2 captains get out there, they throw the bat up in the air, and the first one grabs it, and the second one grabs it, and they go all the way up to the top, and the last one catches the knob at the end of the bat, and he gets to choose first. And of course, the 2 captains are always the best players at softball. and all the rest of us have to line up against the fence, side by side, while the captains choose. I'll take Jim. I'll take Susan. I'll take Bill. I'll take, and the line is getting shorter and shorter, and Ralph is still against the fence. And you're just hoping that one of them will say your name so you can get chosen. And there were times when I got chosen like this. I'll just take the rest of them. The rest of them. You know what the rest of them are? They're the 5 p.m. workers. Now, if you're an athlete, you can't even relate to what I just talked about. Not there. But maybe it was some kind of a girl be nice to guy day or guy be nice to girl day, and the girls had to pick guys to be nice to, and you worried, am I going to be chosen? Maybe it was a spelling bee, and you had teams, and you're wondering, will anybody pick me? The 5 p.m. workers are not to be envied. I don't think Jesus painted them that way. Oh, this is the best situation of all. You only have to work 1 hour. See, that would be a great thing if he hired him at 6 a.m. and they worked till 7 a.m. and he paid them for a full day's wages and they got to go off to Krispy Kreme and eat breakfast. That would be good. Because you know up front you've got the money, and you know up front you're working and your family's taken care of. But that's not what happens here. So if you're reading this story and saying, oh boy, wouldn't it be great to be the 5 p.m. workers, you're missing what's going on in their lives. And there's one more thing about them. We wonder why they aren't picked. I can tell you why I wasn't picked for those sports teams. Because I had the body of an intellectual and the mind of an athlete. There must have been some reason why those workers weren't chosen. There is almost within them an inherent deficiency. Maybe they're not the biggest or the brawniest. Maybe they aren't the most experienced. Maybe they're the oldest. They live those lives understanding we often get chosen late, if at all. Jesus wants you to understand the nature of the 5 p.m. hirelings because he wants you to understand what a great blessing is being bestowed upon them by the Master. So they do work for an hour. And if you're one of them, what are you thinking? Well, you were there at 6 a.m. when the Master came and said, I agree to work you for a denarius for a day. He sends them into the vineyard. So you heard that. You knew that those guys are getting a denarius for a full day's wages. So what are you going to get? Come on, reason through it. You're going to get 1/12 of that. So imagine what that was like when they lined up. I mean, they feel, okay, maybe I can buy bread. Maybe I can get something for my family. At least I worked for 1 hour. I mean, they didn't say at 5 p.m. when he came and said, I'll hire you also, you who have not been hired. Did you hear that? You who have not been hired, I'll hire you. They didn't say, it's not even worth my time. I don't even want to work up a sweat over this. No, I'm sorry. I'm going home. The desperation they feel about their circumstances is reflected in the fact that they are still there at 5 p.m. begging for a job. So they line up. What are we going to get? Well, 1/12 of a denarius is better than nothing. And then the guy behind the table picks up those denarii and starts handing them out, one to each worker. And you'd think the first guy looks at it and he thinks, oh, that's not right, we've been overpaid. And then the second guy gets it, and the third guy gets it, and now they're looking back at each other, a denarius, I got a denarius. What an incredible reaction on the part of these workers. Imagine their joy. And then it may be that the guys hired at 3 o'clock think, oh boy, we're going to get 2 denarii or two denarii because we worked longer than they did, 4 hours instead of 1. And they get the same thing. Now, they may say at first, oh, wait, that didn't seem quite right. I mean, I worked 4 hours. That guy only worked 1 hour. Or 3 to 6, 3 hours. Noon to 6 hours. That doesn't seem fair, but they're still getting more than they thought they were going to get in the final analysis. So they don't feel too cheated. And then comes the 6 a.m. crew. You see them? They're the best workers. They're the guys that got hired first thing in the morning. They're feeling really good now because they've heard the word and it's filtered down through the line and they've seen the other guys going off with their denarii in their hands and they're saying, if a guy worked 1 hour and he got 1 denarius, I worked 12, what am I getting? I'm getting almost 2 weeks' pay. Woohoo! Steak tonight. And when they step up to the table, they get 1 denarius. And I'm sure the first guy looked at it and thought, no, wait. Something's wrong. Something's wrong here. And they start grumbling about it because the others are getting it and others are getting it and the others. Step aside, you got paid. Come on, next. And then the owner says, Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Didn't you agree with me for a denarius? Now, I want you to think about the story the way Jesus tells it. I don't think he makes any mistakes in the story. I don't think he came to this point and said, I don't remember who gets paid first. Is it the 6 a.m. guys or the 5 p.m. guys? I don't know. I'll take a chance 5 p.m. And then he realized, oh, no, that was wrong. I was supposed to pay the 6 a.m. guys first. This is all done by design. Jesus wants us to see the 6 a.m. people, see the 5 p.m. people get paid the same. That's why he lines them up that way. You and I probably wouldn't have done that. Even if we wanted to pay them that way, in the interest of making everybody happy, what would we have done? We'd have called in the 6 a.m. guys. Hey, come on, guys, over here, come here. You're getting your denarius. And pay them all out and say, okay, go. Thank you for coming. We'll hire again tomorrow. Go. And they walk away. And then you'd bring in the 9 a.m. guys, right? And you'd say, hey, guys, don't tell this, but I'm paying you what I paid those other guys. And they go, woo, that's great. You see, and they're happy Whereas the way it happens, the only people that are totally happy are who? The 5 p.m. guys. Now, if we had paid the 9 a.m. guys quietly, don't tell, they'd have gone away with the denarius in their pocket saying, hey, we got more money than we thought we were going to get. Send them away and then call in the 12 noon guys, and then the 3 p.m. guys, and then the 5 p.m. guys. Jesus is making a point. That's why he puts them in the order they're in. And assuming the pay scale, these guys assume they get more money, and they're unhappy. But I want to tell you something. Before you judge them wrong for being unhappy, what would you be? Unhappy. You would. You worked all day long, and I know you agreed for a denarius, but there's something wrong. There's something wrong when I work 12 hours, another guy works 1, and we get the same amount of pay. Something's wrong. The system isn't working. So let me tell you before we draw conclusions, and we're at that point. This is not about employer-employee relationships. In terms of employer-employee relationships, this is a recipe for disaster. Don't read this saying, this is a great business model. It does not work. I'm telling you, it doesn't work. I mean, unless you have incredibly merciful, benevolent, caring people, this doesn't work. All this does is create and foment dissatisfaction. The union's all over this. Steward, we're going to strike. This ain't working. It's not about employers and employees. That's not what Jesus is trying to tell. But there are 3 lessons, I think, that are really important for us, that this is trying to tell us. In chapter 20, verses 14 through 16, the master says, the vineyard owner says, take what is yours and go, but I wish to give to this last man the same as to you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with what is my own? Or is your eye envious because I'm generous? So the first shall be the same as the last. You misread this conclusion if you think what he's saying is the people who are at the back become the first, and the people up front go to the back. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is the first and the last are treated the same way. That's what he did in the story, isn't it? That's what he did. He treated them the same. First, last, doesn't matter. God is gracious to everyone in this parable. God is gracious to everyone. Even when he hired the 6 a.m. guys, he was gracious to them. You say, well, no, they put in a full day's work and they got a full day's wages. But he picked them first. And I got to tell you, if there's nothing else the 6 a.m. workers get that makes them blessed, it is that. They didn't worry a single hour of daylight whether they were going to be able to pay their bills that day. So let me ask you this question. All these people needed grace. All of them. They needed the landowner, the vineyard owner, to be gracious to them. He didn't have to hire any of them. They just needed his grace. Don't you? don't you want people who seem to have no purpose in life to find purpose? People are suicidal. They're artificially stimulated. They're questioning their existence or their purpose or their value. And the longer you live in that state, the deeper those things become. If you're hired at 6 a.m., you don't have that. You're pretty secure. First one chosen on the softball team feels pretty good. I was chosen, why? Because I'm good at what I do, and I got chosen. And I'm not standing there against the fence with Ralph. I got chosen. That 6 a.m. had some great blessings. We'll talk about those in a moment. I think the first lesson Jesus is trying to give to us is God is gracious to everyone. And who are we to say he shouldn't be? Who are we to say, I don't think he should take care of them. I don't think he should give that to them. I think it's wrong for him to be good to those people or to that person. Secondly, God is just. Verse 13. Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Didn't you agree with me for a denarius? And I want you to compare that to what is said in chapter 19, verses 27 and 28. If you go back there, Peter asks a question. He says, we've left everything and followed you. What do we get? And he says, I say to you, you who followed me, in the regeneration, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you'll sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who's left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or farms for my name's sake will receive many times as much and will inherit eternal life. God is just. He'll do what's right. He'll always do what's right. So let's quit questioning whether Jesus really should have said to a thief on the cross who was at one point cursing him and now asking for mercy, whether Jesus ought to give it to him or not. Will not, as Abraham said in his bargaining with God over Sodom and Gomorrah, will not the God of all the universe do right? And there's only one answer to that: yes. So look at what the 6 a.m. people got. You say, yeah, Ralph, they got a denarius, the same thing the 5 p.m. workers got. Look what else they got. They got to be with the master all day. Now, I don't know a lot about this master, but I can tell you, I think he's probably a guy we'd like to be around. He seems pretty compassionate. He seems to care. He keeps coming back, and even the 5 p.m. guys, look, you and I know there's not a lot of work can get done from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Why does he hire them? Because they need it. Isn't that the kind of person you want to work for? And not only that, but they had their expectations met. They went out there in the morning, got there at 5 a.m., and they're waiting, and at 6 a.m. they got hired. Expectations met. I got what I came for. They have security. They've been hired to work all day long. They know they're going to get paid. They have a purpose for living. So let me ask you, would you give that up for 11 hours of hopeless idleness? Would you? I wouldn't. I'd rather be working than worrying for 11 hours. God is merciful to whom he chooses to be merciful. And God is just. He'll do what's right. And finally, the third point, Not only do we need to think about that in regards to our relationships to each other, but we need to understand our purpose is to help other people find work for the Master. To find the people who are up against the fence, dreading that they won't get chosen, and tell them Jesus will choose them. To tell people who think I'm never worth anything that Jesus believes they have worth. That a person can come to the Lord in the last years, last months, last moments of their life. They can come to the Lord and they will receive the same blessings and benefits of eternal life that those others who have served him since their youth get. Find people who need to be hired by Jesus to work in his vineyards. That's what this parable's about. And when I look at it that way, it ends up being one of the most hopeful, positive parables Jesus ever told. Because I don't have to stand against the fence and wonder if Jesus will choose me. If I am willing to give my life to him, if I am willing to turn away from the life I've been living and work for the Master, if I am willing to submit to immersion in water that my sins might be washed away, Jesus says, I'll hire you. You can be mine. And there's nothing better than that, to be a sheep in the hands of the loving shepherd, Jesus Christ. So as we sing this song, if you're ready to become a laborer in the vineyard of the Lord, to become a sheep in the flock of Jesus, the Good Shepherd, he will always do what's right. He will always be gracious. And he asks you, come follow me and bring others to me. If we can help you with that, you come right down to the front while we stand and sing.
Jesus, the loving shepherd, calls thee now to come into the fold of